like way to do it, and no other contestations or whatever of points will be handled otherwise. So yeah, and then also there are already like 255 people here, so that's way more than we can handle with multiple people talking. So do your best and just raise your hand if you have any questions. As we go through this, we'll occasionally be asking if there's any questions and stuff like that. So we're going to be using like the raise hand feature to manage all that, because otherwise it's going to be too hectic. So other TAs, anything you guys want to add before we get started?
Yeah.
I think we're good.
All right, cool. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and first start. So I know, like I said in the announcement, that this is pretty like casual. It's more just about like our personal, what we've done in the past as like TAs and what helped us be successful in the class. So that's what we're going to be talking about. If you have any questions though, like I said, just feel free to raise your hand and you can ask us, you know, about what we've done. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is timing. I heard from a lot of people that one of the challenges on this last quiz was getting stuff done. I see that in the chat as well, that a lot of people are saying that. So that is always just like, you know, a part of chemistry, you know, like that's one of the challenges for me, especially. Like I was really bad at, like, I knew all the material, but I was never able to get the test done on time, or I was really struggling to do that. So I know where you guys are coming from. One of the first things with that really helped me was that when I would take the test or the quizzes or whatever it was I would go through and I would do all the questions that I was like fairly confident on first, and then I would circle or like star the ones that I needed some more time to think on. So that really helped me like move it and keep going through, you know? And then another thing that also really helped me was just doing practice problems. Chemistry is very much so like one of those classes where, or Chem 301, where like the math itself is rarely that difficult, you know, and the material itself like is sort of simple on paper. It's just that they ask you to apply things in a new way that you've maybe never seen.
Is there a Walmart down south? Can you check? Because that would be closer to us getting home.
Yo, Chris.
Yeah, no, don't. There's your TA, everyone. Anyway, so like I was saying, with that being said, the best way to like be ready for that and to really help yourself move along through the test a bit quicker, or the quiz, is just to do practice problems. And we'll talk about some of the ways that you can, you know, access that later on. But the bottom line is, if you know the type of question ahead of time, it's kind of like the SAT. Like the material itself is challenging enough, but knowing the type of questions they're going to ask you and knowing how to approach those, or having like enough of the foundation to approach those, is really what's going to help you speed up the process of like actually getting through the test, and will help you like apply all the knowledge you actually have. So, and then Katie, I know you had one point you wanted to add about this as well.
Oh, yes. Okay. So with struggling with time, I think with me, at least, I just get in my head about it. And I think I saw that in the chat a little bit. Someone talking about just like getting really anxious when they saw number 2, I think it was. And so just reminding yourself that like the minute you start to stress, it's going to slow you down a ton. And I know it's hard, but you have to kind of like, if you see a problem and you have no idea what it's saying, just skip it and focus on the other problems. Do not let it stress you out, and go back to it at the end. And at least for me, whenever I go back to it at the end, hopefully something clicks when I've seen the other questions, and that helps a lot. But like, just don't get stuck on one question, because that's going to ruin the rest of the quiz for you. And then also just try not to stress out. I mean, yes, I understand these quizzes are hard and it's your first year, you want to make good grades, but general chemistry is hard. The more practice you do though, I promise these quizzes, like the more quizzes you have, the easier they will get, regardless if the material is getting more challenging. I know it's your first couple of weeks in college. So I just wanted to remind y'all, like, this is just a quiz. It does not define your intelligence or what grade you'll get in the class yet. Okay. So that was what I wanted to say with timing.
Awesome, thank you. Matthew, Chris, anything to add on this chunk about timing?
In regards to, wait, Matthew, you can go first.
Y'all go for it.
All right, so in regards to timing, I think one thing that you have to keep in mind is that if you're taking too long to solve a problem, or you're trying to like muscle your way through it, it's better for, like Katie said, it's better for you to go to another problem that you have an easier time with. But then that also speaks towards your preparation as well. So all these problems, like the professors will throw you a couple curveballs at a time. But for the most part, you should be able to identify the formula that you need to be used, the concepts that you need to use, and we're going to talk about that a bit later on. But yeah, just keep in mind that if you're stuck on a problem for more than like 5 minutes, that might be a preparation issue as well. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and then also, okay, so if y'all haven't noticed, each question is worth the same amount. They're all like out of a 5-point rubric, right? So if something takes longer and if something takes shorter, they're both actually weighted the same. So start with the ones that you know for sure and that you can just like speed through them so that you can like maximize your points, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing before we move on, I forgot to mention is that, you know, like the conceptual ones, especially for me, were the ones where I would lose a lot of time because I'd be sitting there thinking, like trying to, you know, put all the like concepts in my brain, and they might ask you like a relationship or like a scenario, and I'd be like really trying to think it through. And I just didn't really necessarily have the knowledge to think it all like just like thinking about the model itself. But I did like understand the math side of, for example, like ideal gas laws. That's a semi-math heavy topic. There were a lot of situations where they'd ask me like a conceptual question, I wouldn't be sure. But when I went back and I plugged it into the math, you know, and I like either put in fake values or I just like manipulated the equation to sort of look at mathematically like the relationship between things, that also helped me save a lot of time. So knowing how to, you know, apply the math to the conceptual and vice versa is really important with that. So I think before we go on, Bridget, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I've been noticing this in the chat a lot, and it was something that I also noticed while I was taking the test. There was a question on there. I don't know if this has been like covered in an email or anything because I've had a really busy weekend, but there was a question on the quiz that I think it's the gas like stoichiometry like that we're covering now in this LE, or it was at least close to it. Like I think it was question 2, like that I just didn't, like I looked at it and I was like, okay, unless I'm tripping right now, like I straight up did not know. Like I just hadn't recognized it yet. Like I didn't, I felt like it wasn't something that we covered yet because like I'm just like, I was working on it before.
Yeah, so we've discussed that with like, that has been very emailed about or whatever you want to say. Like the teaching team has talked about that a lot and the professors are discussing it. First things first, like I said, that's not really like our area to discuss or whatever. But if you have any like qualms about that, feel free to reach out to your professor or submit a regrade request. But personally, like I think that the professors have always been very fair. I thought it was relative. I thought the quiz was fair. But I also think, you know, if they decide like they're not one of those professors that's like, we're right and we're not going to listen to you guys. So I know they're discussing it, and if they change their mind, they'll be fair to you guys. So, but yeah, that's just not something really that we are the ones to discuss for.
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering more like if that's going to be something that happens more often. Like just, I mean, I don't know if you'd know that. Like I know that this is more of a session about like y'all's advice for us, like how you guys work, you know, work through these harder classes. But like, I don't know, is that just something we should look out for? Like trying to look ahead a little bit and make sure that stuff that we've learned that is applicable to stuff that we're going to be doing like in the next week or so. Like, should we just kind of try and look ahead so that we're not like blindsided by stuff like that?
I think the important part about this question, and I've looked at it, I mean, I don't have it up right in front of me, but I did look at it because I knew people were discussing it.
Yeah, it was like 2.
I don't think that it was information that was not, like, I think that the information we're going to cover lays it out more so, but I don't think that it was a question that was not doable by combining past principles, if that makes sense. So chemistry is very much so, it's like an application-based class, you know, it's not biology where it's just memorization, regurgitation. Like that's something that, like I'm a bio major, so I get that. Biology or chemistry is very much so like taking what you know, looking at the wide variety of questions they can apply it to in situations, and then combining different concepts and putting them together. So I can't like make any claims about what to expect for the future or like where the information is coming from, but I can tell you that, you know, within reason, if there is something we've covered or if there are 2 concepts that we've covered, you should be able to make the connections between them and put them together. Now, obviously that was like probably the most challenging question on the quiz. So that is going to be one of those upper level like challenge questions. But if you are like striving to get, you know, the 100 or the A in the class or whatever, that's something you need to be ready for. But I don't want to get bogged down on that because we do have other stuff to cover, but yeah, like I said, feel free to reach out to a professor and submit a regrade request. Yeah, so I hope that helps. But Matthew, do you want to go ahead and take it on to finding old exams?
Yeah, so this is coming from someone who's actually written like questions before. So I helped write questions before on previous exams, just a little bit, but in general, everyone who's writing the questions right now has written questions for the past like 3-4 years. So if you haven't like already tried to do this, try to find old exams on places like Kufers. I know Coursera might have some. I don't think Chegg has any, but Chegg is also kind of sketch right now. I wouldn't try that. But any old exams or any old questions you find from Professor Bieberdorf, or like Dr. Bieberdorf, Dr. Sparks, Dr. Anderson, and one more, Dr. McCord. Dr. McCord also used to be on our teaching team. He's off doing his own thing right now, but he also used to write questions that were very, very similar. So if you can find those, I mean, it'll be like pretty obvious once you see it. Like that they're written by the same exact people, and it's gonna, yeah. Like, those are your best source for practice problems, and there's like literally hundreds of them available online.
For someone that says I thought that was illegal, the Gen Chem professors have given, like, they said that it's okay to find past exams.
Yeah.
Dr. B normally always talks about Kufers, so you know, finding old exams as a resource for studying is okay in this class.
Here, I'm just because we have a moment, and I think it's good to show people. If you just go to Kufers, like that's all I'm clicking right now. Kufers, and then Bieberdorf. That's a very distinct name. And pull up here. Yeah, so right here, this is a perfect example. I had McCord 2 years ago. And even just like a few days ago when I was looking at practice questions, you just come through here. This is an old test. I might have even taken this. I don't know. And it is the type of question it is and the explanation. So this is like the #1 best resource because, you know, like I said, like chemistry is about applying to different types of questions, but at the end of the day, there are also like only, you know, there's a finite number of ways to ask the same question. So if you go through these practice quests or practice tests and you can, you know, do them all and get 100, or you know how to approach every question, like you're going to be ready for anything that we're going to throw at you guys. So just wanted to show that real quick.
Two things really quick. First, because obviously y'all are doing like little mini quizzes every week, and these are like unit exams. If you try to find like a unit 1 exam or a unit 2 exam, it might have things on there that, you know, you haven't covered yet. Don't freak out. The class was just divided into different sections just because y'all are taking assessments more frequently. And the second one was 2 people asked in chat, why aren't these just posted? And where was the other one? Why aren't these posted, and should we not do the practice questions in the book? They're not posted because most of these questions are in some way reused, and they are actually posted in that orange book. So if you're wondering like where those questions come from the orange book, a lot of them are reused test questions.
Yeah, really good point. Do you guys have any questions about finding old exams and using them for practice? All right, cool.
We do have like
6
5
parts.
hands raised.
Okay, never mind.
Real quick.
All right. Kaylin's the first one I have. Kaylin Cox.
I was wondering how exactly test regrades work, because I know they open, or quiz regrades, because I know they open at 5 today and close at 5 tomorrow, but like, what are the qualifications and what exactly is that?
So at least for that, and then Matthew, Katie, Chris, if I misspeak, feel free to correct me. But with that, it's just, you can submit a regrade for anything, like you know, the question too. If you think like I should have gotten points here, or if you speak to a friend and they're like, oh, we put the same answer except you got an extra point taken off or something, feel free to submit that. It's just we look at a smaller pool of the tests. You know, I believe the professors do it, so they ultimately have final say. And then yeah, that is what it is. Like you just submit it, and then they're just going to take another look at it. And then I'm not sure, Matthew, Katie, do you know, like, is there the ability to comment or like point out what you think you should have gotten points on?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
There should be a comment where you can explain like why you're submitting the regrade request, and then the professors will go through and they'll either accept it or decline it, and they'll normally give a reason if they decided to decline it, why they did, or or they'll give you the points back.
Makes sense. Does that answer your question?
Yes, where exactly do we like file for that, for a regrade?
I believe it should be like if you go to Gradescope and you go to review your grade, I think there should be a button somewhere there, but it's not for the entire quiz. I think it's specifically for each question. So I don't know exactly what it looks like because we all see the instructor point of view and not the student point of view, so we don't know exactly what it looks like. But if you go review your quiz, it should be like by each question there should be an option to regrade.
Gotcha, thank you.
And say that's a good question. So I think after this, we'll reach out to one of the professors or someone who would be able to tell you better, and then we'll try and get that sent out this evening so you guys can take care of that. So, all right, Anna Alvarez, next question.
Yeah, my question was basically just like, what kind of should we go to like GChem and look at the questions that are posted there if we need like extra help? Because like the questions in the practice book and the LEs and homework seem to be a lot easier than the ones that were on the quiz, at least this week. And if that's going to be the like what happens going forward, I was just wondering like if we should use GChem or like the Kiefer thing that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, so Katie's just about to talk about that, so we'll get to that in a second.
Talk about GChem. I would always do the extra practice in the GChem website. I would say that for the finding the questions that are going to be most similar to the ones that are on your quiz would be the past test, like just like the wording of it and the structure of it. But I think GChem, what I would do whenever I was in Gen Chem, now we had 4 tests. We didn't have weekly quizzes, but I would read a little bit of GChem each day, like leading up to the test. And then to kind of like reiterate what I had read, I would do the worksheets. And I think they helped me a lot. There's some math questions, like practice questions in there, but it really helped with the conceptual stuff, and like having to write out the conceptual stuff really helped me. So I can show y'all, if y'all don't know where that is, where the GChem extra practice worksheets are. I'll go ahead and
Here, Katie,
share.
before we do that, let's get these questions and then we'll just move on to that section. So Princess, Allison, and then, or sorry, Kylie first. Kylie Engstrom.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. I was just gonna ask, so on the past test, would exam 1, because I know our setup's a little different, would exam 1 be equivalent to like 1C quiz, like our 1C quiz?
Yeah, so that's what Chris was, or I'm sorry, not Chris. That's what Matthew was saying, is that they are like unit tests. So that is going to be the 1A, 1B, 1C, like the whole first unit. So then when it's like 2A, 2B, 2C, whatever it is, that would go back to like the second exam in Sparks or McCord or anything like that. So, and like Matthew said,
Okay,
it's not all,
perfect.
like sometimes there are, differentiations, like sometimes they'll cover different topics. So use it within reason. If it's something you've never seen before, like don't stress too much. So, but yeah.
Okay, thanks so much.
No problem. Next question, Princess.
I just want to know if we're going to be going any specific questions on the quiz here on the Zoom today.
No. We're not doing any specific questions over the quiz. Maybe at the end we will if we have time. But first things first, we're going through like preparation for the next quiz. So, all right. Allison, last question.
Okay, I guess you just said that you weren't going over specific questions, but a few in the chat, I don't know if y'all are going to address this or not, like number 5 or I think, or one of the questions, then we got like partial credit and we weren't sure why. I think it was number 8 and I didn't know if like we should I guess, email the professor and ask about that, but we got like 3 out of 5 instead of 5 points. And it didn't have like an explanation why.
Yeah. So like I said, I don't have the rubric in front of me, but the best option is to, yes, just submit a regrade request or email, because the professor is the one with the ultimate like last say, you know. So I would go ahead and do that. That's your best plan for now.
Quick question for you, Allison. You said like y'all got points off, but there's no reason.
Or like it doesn't have an explanation posted why. It just says 3 out of 5 points.
If it says that, you should be able to click on the question, like on the sidebar, and it expands the rubric. When it expands the rubric, it should tell you, it should give you a reason. Because when we, on our side, when we go through, there was just a giant rubric, and we click on the item, basically, that corresponds to your answer. We don't just go in and say, this looks like a 3 out of 5. Like everything has a specific point value. So we just assign that. So there should be a rubric viewable to y'all to see why that you got it wrong.
I see that now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes, and actually I misspoke. Do not email the professors. My wires got crossed. Just submit the regrade request. That is the #1 best way to do it, because they're going to be going through and checking that. They may not check their email, but they know that they're going to be having a bunch of regrade requests or some tonight. So that's the best way to do that. So, all right, Katie, do you want to talk next about GChem and problem solving and everything like that?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and I'll show y'all where you can find the extra practice in GChem if you haven't found those already. So let me do that. Okay. So, okay, this is the homepage for Dr. B's, but it should be the same. GChem should be linked on all 3 of the professors' homepages on Canvas. But if you just go to the GChem website, or you can just Google search it, it's pretty easy to find. Okay, you go to gases, since that's where y'all are at. Okay, I definitely I'm not a big textbook reader. Like I really don't ever read the textbook in any of my other classes, which is kind of bad. But for Gen Chem, I always read GChem. I wouldn't really take in-depth notes. I mean, that is helpful, but I didn't. I would just kind of skim through it to see if there's anything I was kind of missing that or something I'd never seen before. And then I would always do the help sheets and worksheets at the end. And so there's gas laws, gas stoichiometry, and then the non-ideal gases, which you'll learn this week. So here, I'll just show you all an example of one of the worksheets. And it just has normally conceptual stuff at the beginning, like definition stuff. And then there's some mathematical questions that it's kind of, I guess, it doesn't really look like your quizzes. It's a little bit more simplified, but this I would say is a good way to kind of reiterate and check what you learned when you read GChem, or a beginning kind of phase of studying, go through this, make sure you know it. And then after you do this, I would normally do either redo practice or homework questions, and then also look at KUFers, because KUFers I would say would be the ultimate, the way to find the most similar quiz questions, because those are written the same. McCord team, he taught with Bieberdorf, so their question and their style of writing is very similar, so McCord's test will be really helpful. So yeah, that's just that, and then all the keys are posted as well. Okay, and so that's kind of what I wanted to share there. Another thing that kind of helps me is whenever you're doing, to kind of double check yourself while you're taking the quiz, say you do a math question, you come up with an answer, normally you should be able to reason it conceptually. So I would try to double check yourself when you get an answer, just do the math one more time, but also conceptually make sure it makes sense, if that makes sense. It's just, that's how I would always, and I would find myself making errors that way. So I think that's a little strategy tip for when you are doing the quizzes. So yeah, that was just my 2 cents on that. Oh, Alex, you're muted.
Shoot. Sorry. Does anyone have any questions over what Katie just brought up? All right, cool. And then Allison, is your hand raised from earlier? I think so, Allison Tucker. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Oh, yes, yes.
No, you're good. All right, so collaboration with others. This is the next thing we wanted to talk about. I found when I was taking Chem 301 2 years ago, that the single #1 best thing that helped me learn the material was actually teaching it to my friends. Like I had like a little study group or whatever with my FIG. And yeah, like just explaining concepts to them, or like, you know, if they didn't understand like why something was the way it was, like we would sit and figure out like, you know, based on the math, like why would this happen? Or thinking back to like, you know, the physical, like actual, like if you could touch the molecules, like why would this make sense? So the going through and working with others and talking to other people was super helpful for me. I highly encourage you all to do that. Dr. Bieberdorf always says, you may have already heard this, I don't know, that she says that you should have 2 study groups, one where you're the dumbest person or you know the least, and then one where you're also like the best person and you know the most. And that's just because, you know, yeah, you're not always going to know everything. So it's useful to have that study group where everyone else can help you out and give you the new information. And then it's also good to be in that study group where you maybe know the most and you are helping everyone else out and teaching it to them. So even just like my times in LA last year, like I've understood the material way more now that I've been forced to help teach it to other people. So cannot encourage that enough. It is a very useful part of that. So
on top of that, sorry. Also, like even if say you don't have a study group, I know since y'all are online, like it's harder to meet people or whatever it may be. So even just saying it out loud to yourself, explaining concepts, I know it kind of sounds, you know, but I would do this, like I would just like say concepts out loud and like reason it aloud, and it would help me like kind of understand what I like really know and what I kind of am like hesitant on, or like explaining it to your roommate, or like just like saying it out loud. I don't know if that helps anyone else, but it definitely helped me just kind of with the more conceptual stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. And so I happen to see in the chat that there's a lot of people saying like they don't know anyone, or like they're not able to get in touch with people. First things first, like number one place I would go is probably your discussion section for your chemistry discussion section. So 2 days from now, or whenever you end up having discussion, I encourage you all to like make sure to make your get your contact information for everyone and make a group me. There's also like some of the class group me's I think that were sent out on the first day. I'm not in the loop with those. And then the other thing I would say is that you are likely all in a FIG if you're a freshman student. So go use that as a resource as well, at least for CNS people. I'm a FIG mentor. I think some of my FIG people are in here, but there's a group chat that we have, and most FIG mentors tend to like create a group me for their class. So get in touch with your peers from there. Likely they're in the same chemistry class as you. So that's a really good resource with people to work with. So yeah, those are the 2 things that I would really encourage. Any questions on collaborating with others before we move on? All right, cool. Katie, do you want to talk some more about GChem and everything with that?
I think I covered most of it. I would just, another thing I want to touch on that with, like I mentioned this earlier, Dr. B used to recommend a 7-day study schedule for when we would have, you know, unit exams. And obviously since y'all are tested or you have quizzes every week, you can't study 7 days in advance because you're, you know, learning the material while you know. So I would just try, if I were y'all, I would just try my best to stay up with the content as you learn it, and kind of like, we'll talk later about making a cheat sheet since it is open note, but kind of making that cheat sheet as you go and like reading a little bit of GChem as you go, and kind of like studying throughout the week instead of just having to like cram the night before, because that'll help you learn it better and like retain it more, especially for the final, in my experience. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's just if you put like, it's better to study, you know, for this class, maybe like 30 minutes to an hour every day or every other day than like, you know, 5 hours the night before your quiz or something like that. It's just spread it out. And I think it'll help y'all not be as stressed and also like understand the material more.
Yeah, for sure. And just while we're on the topic of GChem, I'll say, I think office hours are really good for some people. GChem's really good for other people. Some people are like really good with their friends or whatever. For me, like GChem was definitely that. Like, I don't know, I rarely ever went to office hours, and all I would do like was just read through all of GChem, look at a bunch of practice quizzes. And like, one of the things that really helped me and would likely help you guys is I would pull up GChem and I'd be reading on my computer, and then I have my notebook next to me, and I would basically just like paraphrase GChem or summarize it, you know. I would go through and I'd write out the different relationships and the formulas in my own words, and I would make sure that I understood it. And basically I would just tell myself, like, I know the units, I can see them on GChem, I know what's covered based on the learning objectives, and I would just make sure I've gone through everything. I remember a really good TA my freshman year said that like it's always that one thing you forget or like don't get to on GChem or like the learning objective that like ends up on the test or the exam quiz, whatever. So yeah, just look at that, make sure you cover everything. And that goes back to like what Katie was saying, don't do it the night before. You want to be done with your studying, at least for me, like 2 days before whatever type of exam or assessment's coming up. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. And then as always, like you can feel free to ask us questions if you want any more detailed information about that. Savannah Joseph, I see a hand raised. Do you have a question?
Hi, so I was just because like, first of all, this is like kind of a lot and I don't know how to have time to do everything y'all are suggesting, but I think that's kind of the only way to do well in this class. Is there like, because the thing is like the LEs and the practice problems were so different from the quiz and just like so much easier, I thought. Is there any way that like we could get a direct source of everything that we need to study that maybe I don't have to scour the internet for?
Yeah, I think, so that's a really good point. I have felt that way as well at certain points throughout college. I think right now is probably not a good time for us to like go through everything, but I do think that that's a really good idea. So perhaps like the TAs and I or the LAs, we can like discuss like a lot of the places where we've found stuff in the past and see if we can maybe put together like a document or like a good list of resources that we can put out to that.
Another thing we could probably do is maybe we could look at KUFERS and post those for y'all so y'all don't have to look through KUFERS for old tests. With that, like everything we're saying, I by no means did everything that Alex did and he didn't do everything I did. I'm just like sharing like personally what we did that worked for us, and everyone has different learning. Like if you get a lot out of reading a textbook, like read the textbook, but for me sometimes that isn't the most helpful thing. So like don't think you have to do everything we're saying. We're just sharing what helped us. But I would say for finding questions that are most like what you're going to see on your quiz, like difficulty level, I would really focus on old tests. I think that's where you're going to find it the most.
And where are those old tests?
So if you look at KUFERS, it's kind of like a Course Hero, but no, it's just another website. And KUFERS.com, and you can look up Bieberdorf. I think Dr. B might have some tests on there. McCord has a ton on there, and he used to team teach with Dr. B, so very similar writing style to how the tests and quizzes are now. So his are really helpful. So any McCord test, there's some like times you'll see a question where like if you have no idea what it's saying and it's something you clearly hadn't learned before, just skip it. But those are really helpful because that's like the same writing structure, everything for what you should see on a quiz.
Yeah, so just to show you guys real quick, I know we went through this, so I'll briefly do it once more. Literally all I Googled was KUFERS, Bieberdorf, and it's literally the first question or first response, Test Bank Chem 301. My Wi-Fi is bad, but once it pulls up, it's literally just test after test, yeah. Exam 1, McCord, he used to team teach with us. Exam 3, Sparks. Obviously that is not what we're covering now, but just start looking for exam 1s. I saw in the chat, someone said, who can we look up? And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the 4 would be Bieberdorf, Sparks, Anderson, and then McCord. Dr. Lottie does a different schedule than us, so do not do that. You'll do very poorly. But yeah, those are the 4 you can look up. Yeah, and you know, the other thing, and I know we said this, is that's one reason I really like GChem. I feel the same way about the LEs sometimes, and that I feel like I'm missing, you know, the big picture because I feel like I'm getting like separate puzzle pieces. I really like GChem because it's completely laid out from A to Z, everything you will cover in your first year of chemistry. So go there, and that's a really good way to like check your understanding and sort of see a table of contents of everything. So, all right, Savannah, I hope we answered your question. Francisca, do you have a question?
Yeah, so did you guys used to use, or did the professors used to use Quest in their classes before like we all went on Zoom? Like for practice problems and homework?
No. So Quest was only used for the exams. That's why the formatting is like, but that 2-column format that you always see, that was the only time they used Quest. And that's why you'll see Quest like on KUFERS and all that. Other than that, we didn't use the software to give practice problems or homework questions, but the questions that we gave on Quest are the same questions that we're giving through other formats, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All
Does
right.
UT have a test bank of old tests, or do we have to rely on Coopers? I know other colleges have like university test banks you can go to.
Not that I know of. One thing that I don't know if I should say this, but so Dr. McCord has like a Chem 301 fall 2018. That was the class I took it. He had like a web page for that year, and then in fall 2017 he had a web page for that year as well, and it was everything you needed. It was like a little hub, but it also had copies of the first exam and of the second exam from that semester. So what I did was I actually found his fall 2017 website, and I went and looked at the tests that he posted, like the tests that his class took 1 year prior to me. So that's another place you can go look. But I do not know of any test bank. Coopers is your best option for that. And then, doing something like that, McCord used to have a lot of resources that you can find as well.
Yeah, on that, Alex, I'll just tell them how to do it. If you go to McCord, like if you literally just look up McCord, like GChem, it takes you to like the first link literally says like fall 18 or spring 19 or whatever. And if you look in the URL, like it says fall 2018, just change that fall 2018 to like any other year, like fall 2017 or fall 2016. Like he keeps all the stuff archived. So you just change the URL to like whatever date, it takes you to that like webpage for that semester. And then you can find the old test that he posts on there. So that's like the closest thing that we can give out to a test bank. We are not allowed to give, like us, the TAs and LAs are not allowed to give out old questions officially, but the stuff we would give you is the same stuff as like the stuff you found on Coopers and McCord's website and all that, if that makes sense. It's like, I'm not literally allowed to give you a question, but you can find the same thing that I would give you if I could give you something, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Wait,
one
could you
thing,
repeat that?
Like, we're not allowed to give y'all questions like from old tests, but the stuff that we would give you from old tests, you could find with just a little bit of work, like the McCord's test that, or like Coopers and all that. Like they're the same stuff that we would give you if we were allowed to post old exams. So just like go there,
Yeah. And the thing that I was going to say just about McCord is that make sure there's a Chem 301 test, because this past year he started teaching non-major chemistry. So just make sure you look at that it is McCord 301 or whatever teacher. Make sure it is Chem 301. So that's the only thing I wanted to bring up. So, all right, Francisco, we answered your question. Victoria Torres, did you have a question?
Yes, I don't know if you guys have any advice with the time limit, because that's what gets me, like seeing the time just going down so fast. It's what makes me not concentrate on my problems. Like I think I understand the material, but it's just the time. Like for this past quiz, I wasn't even able to finish the quiz. So I don't know if you guys have any advice for that.
Yeah, for sure. So at the very beginning, we are about to talk like about a cheat sheet and like tips for that. At the very beginning, I did briefly talk about timing. With that, the number one thing that really helped me, because in general, I'm a very slow worker. Like I'm always take the full time and always struggling with the time. For me, it's just doing the practice problems and knowing what types of questions to expect. That really helped me out. And then also, especially for gas laws, it is a very math and conceptual unit. It's not like way heavier on one than the other or anything like that. So really understanding, how to manipulate PV equals nRT and using that to like determine relationships and apply those to conceptual questions really helped me out. So the conceptual ones are the ones where you can really get bogged down and stuck. If you do that, go back to the math, look at your equations and be like, oh, well, diffusion is inversely proportional to molar mass. So how can I, consider that and apply to a conceptual question or whatever type of thing like that. So, but we're about to go talk about cheat sheets. So that will also be a good thing to consider. Any other TAs, do you guys have points to make?
No, I think
start talking about cheat sheets if you want.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
All right. So if y'all haven't been using your notes on these quizzes, you're kind of missing out because like we're straight letting you use notes. Yeah, then there's no way around that. So what I would recommend is having like a really concise 1-page piece of paper where you basically just put down all the equations you need to know, what each variable means within each equation, and special relationships that we mentioned during LEs and all that kind of stuff, just so that you have like a quick access kind of deal. You don't have to look things up in your notes, because I know like some of y'all take like literally like novel worth like amount of notes, and it's insane to like to look through all that. So I would try to concise it to like the very bare bones on one sheet of paper that you can flip back and forth. Don't worry about constants and conversions and like because it's OpenNote, you can literally just Google it, like 1 ATM to Tor. Like you don't need to waste time with like that kind of stuff. But any kind of relationship or equation, I would put it just like some kind of quick access thing on your piece of paper. If there's a specific type of question that you run into, like when you're studying on a practice problem or something, and that's like really difficult, and you have no idea, like you wouldn't think you'd be able to like redo that on a quiz, like you can write that on your cheat sheet too. Like I've done that before for other classes, and like just writing out the process for a tough problem can help you, because you can reference that when you're doing a problem on a quiz. What else? I feel like I had something else too.
Maybe write little reminders on the cheat sheets, like don't forget units, because I know when you're stressed you can forget little things like that. So just like put little reminders for that, because that's like 2 points on a quiz.
Yeah, and like one thing, and I was gonna like write out some stuff too, but like for example, like I write like PV equals nRT, and then I also go through and I isolate each individual variable so I can look at it given a circumstance they give me. How can I look at it? So like if I'm looking at volume and I want to, and a conceptual question is like, oh, will the volume increase or decrease? You have all these different ones written out in the different derivations of the question, so that way you are able to sort of like, instead of going through and like dealing with this on your own or thinking about it, you can just go look at the individual ones. Same with like Boyle's law. If I want to have P1 V1 ready to go, even though that's really simple, this helps me at least with like my test anxiety, having all my stuff there ready to go. So that way, if I am stuck, I can come down here and I can look at the equations I know. Like I can look at the one with the VRMS. I can't remember if there's a name for it, but when you're doing like the ratio of velocities and things like that, having all those types of things ready to go really is going to help you like consider your options if you do get stuck on something. Another thing that I would put at least is like most ideal gas. Like under what conditions is a gas going to be most ideal? And then I would come down here and I would say low pressure, high temp. And obviously like that seems a little silly because you're like, oh, it's OpenNote. I had open notes for a different class, and like the more I relied on the notes, the worse I did. And that's like a trap to easily fall into. But don't let your notes, don't be like, trapped to your notes or anything like that. Do your best to make sure that, if you can take the test without notes, then you're going to do even better with them, is a good point. So let me see. Is Emerson have a question about this?
My question was like, do y'all have any advice for people who aren't good at math? Like, I feel like my math skills held me back because like I had the equation right and stuff, but then I messed up on my math.
So one thing, and then I don't want to hog the conversation, feel free to join in. One thing for me is just doing a really good job of drawing everything out. I'm also one of those people that is like, either going to stress about making a mistake or make a mistake if I'm not just very organized in my work. So everything I do, I lay out very well. Even if it's stoichiometry, I make sure I form like a little chart like underneath the formula, and I'm like doing things very clearly. So I think doing that, and then also, I'll share a screen real quick. working with like manipulating the variables first before you start plugging in the math or the numbers. That's like a very important thing. If you have, you know, PV equals nRT and you're solving for temperature, don't be one of those people that just starts plugging in numbers. First go through and do the whole, you know, manipulate the equation this way equals T, you know, do that. And then like when you go in and plug in numbers, don't just multiply in the calculator. If you do tend to be making mistakes, go through, and these are just arbitrary numbers, but go through, plug in that, plug in your volume in parentheses, you know, 4 liters, whatever, and do a really good job of like deliberately 0.08206. Do a good job of deliberately going through and making sure that you're keeping your work as organized as possible. Another thing that I really like, good advice I was told by someone, I don't remember who, is that they say let the units guide you, meaning, so we're looking at this question and, you know, this is weird numbers, I just plugged them in, but looking at this question, if I plug all these in and I look at the units here, I can check within my units that everything is working out. So my temperature here on the right-hand side, that should be Kelvin. So I know that has to be Kelvin. And then over here, I look at the units I have here and I make sure that things cancel out. So what I mean by that is on the left-hand side, I have atmospheres, those cancel. I have moles, and then I have moles in the denominator here, so those cancel. I have liters up top and liters here, so those cancel. And then I have Kelvin. So I know that my answer is, in theory, at least based on how I set up the equation, matching the work I did. So it's a little bit to get into right now, but doing that is a very useful skill throughout all of chemistry, and even like I'm using it now in physics. So going through and doing that and making sure that you're setting things up correctly and keeping them very organized is like what is going to help you improve those math skills, because the math is easy, so to say. It's just the making sure you set it up. You know how to multiply and divide, you know? So I hope that answers your question. And if not, we can always discuss that more in office hours. So, all right, Sean Flynn, did you have a question?
You keep talking about using GChem to help you. Katie showed us like the practice problems. Each time that you say GChem is really helpful, are you referring like specifically to the practice problems, or do you guys also watch the videos and look at all the notes? Because I know you said you try to paraphrase, but I couldn't tell if you found one more helpful than the other.
Yeah, so with you said, and with what we said about GChem, and like Katie brought up, like she said something totally different than what I did, you know, and we both did well in the class. So it is really just knowing what works for you. But with GChem, the practice problems are very useful, but what worked for me, what I would just read through the whole website. You know, I would look at everything that we're covering that week, and then I would scroll over, let me just pull it up real quick. I would scroll over to like the little table of contents thing on the left and go through that. So let me pull that up so that way I can be clear about what I'm saying. So as you see here, I got a GChem. And then
with the videos in GChem, personally, I never watched them. I don't know. I'm sure like they might be helpful. Just test it out, see if they help you. If not, I never watched them. I would just kind of skim through, read, and then do the worksheet problems.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. So this is what I'm talking about. I'd come to the gases page. I'd go through and I'd look at the, so like for your unit quiz or whatever, like when you're wanting to make sure you know everything so far. First, I would go through, and at the end of the unit, I would just look at everything. And I'd be like, you know, some of these are kind of wordy and confusing, but I'd be like, do I get what this is talking about? And do I think I know what it means, you know? And that's a good way, like just cross them off to make sure that at the end of the unit, you're covered. Within that, so right now we know we have not started mixtures of gases, but I know that we've done gas laws and ideal gas laws. I just come over here, I'd hit view all, and I'd have this going on a computer, and then I have my journal next to me or my notebook next to me. And all I would do is read through this, watch the videos if you like the videos. Like Katie and I said, I didn't really watch them. And I would just read through it, and basically I would take notes. I would just write down what is important. I, you know, write on my R constant to make sure I knew that. Scrolling down here, you know, I'd start looking at these concepts. I'd like write number density, I'd write this out, and then I would explain like what I plug in here. And then I'd give a little summary like to myself in my own words, like what do I think number density means, you know? And that's how I would take all my notes. And like that worked really well for me. I know it doesn't for everyone, but that's what I would do. Also, things like this, where they do derivations of things and they sort of show you how to get from one place to another. That's really useful for me. So there's no way we could cover everything, but that's what I did, and that's what worked really well for me. So if you have been struggling and it hasn't been working, I suggest trying a new studying method, and that should help you guys out.
Hey, Alex, do you help with office hours? Because if so, some people are asking if you want to plug your office hours.
So I don't do my own office hours, but I sit in the office hours with Dr. Sparks on Thursdays at 11 to 12. So yeah, and then if we have been struggling like with getting office hour times or whatever, then feel free to reach out to someone on the teaching team and we can maybe see about like adding some more office hours. So that's always an option too.
Also regarding office hours, I meant to say this earlier. I would try to go to Dr. B's office hours like maybe once a week, but say you don't have time, or you don't have time to go to office hours, or you don't think you benefit from them that much. I would try to at least go to the office hours right before the quiz with one of the professors, because it always helped. Like it was always the most helpful, the one right before our test. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions? All right, next up. I hope that answered your question, Sean. Faye, do you have a question? I see your hand's raised.
Yeah, so one of the thing that consumed the most amount of time during the quiz was having to upload my answer. And I don't know if you guys like take into account the amount of time it takes to upload everything, but what's the best advice you can give to like setting it up so that it doesn't take that much time? Because sometimes just like emailing it to myself from my phone to the laptop so I can put everything together, it stresses me out even more than just taking the quiz in general.
Yeah, for sure. And then as always, if anyone else has anything else that works, feel free to speak up. So yes, we do like take that into account. In general, like the professors and lots of people always look at these quizzes and they know that they're good at chemistry, but they make sure that they think it's reasonable. And then they also like add time for the fact that this is, your first time seeing the material or whatever. So they do think about that. They don't just, arbitrarily give a number. And another thing is like, we hear a lot from people, like whether it's emails or like in discussions and stuff like that, we're always getting feedback from students. So we adjust as we go, but yes, we do consider that. As far as advice, one thing that really helped me was that if you do have, an iPhone and a MacBook, using AirDrop a lot of times really helps me. That's a really quick way to handle that. The other thing is, I'm assuming you have, but if you guys have not looked at those videos that I believe Grace posted earlier on, you can find those on Canvas, and that gives like our tips and like what we would suggest to you as far as, getting your material scanned in or getting a photo taken of that. So yeah, and it is a challenge. I understand that, but I would suggest like having your email open on your laptop, having your phone ready to go, and then just take try and set yourself up in the most streamlined way as possible beforehand. But if if this continues to be an issue, then I am sure we will adjust accordingly to make sure that you have enough time, because that is definitely not what we want to be testing with you guys. So, but yeah, and if you don't think that we're doing enough, you're always welcome to come to office hours for the professor and let them know in person. That is another good option you have there. So yeah. All right, so that was the last question we had. Did someone else have a question?
I actually had a recommendation that I could give to you, Faye. So basically, like if you're trying to upload like a picture on Gradescope, you can like log in through your phone, like through Canvas, and then you can just like take a picture of your work and it'll automatically upload. And then once it's time to submit it, like on your laptop, it'll like have that picture uploaded on your laptop too. So it's quicker that way. It'll take like 2 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for the advice. And yeah, as always, if you guys have something like a really good suggestion you think that other students would like to hear about, feel free to like email me or one of the TAs through Canvas. Like that's always a good option, and we can like get that out to other people if that is a good option you have. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions?
Can you say that tip again for uploading work? Is it the Gradescope app or the Canvas app?
Yeah, okay, so basically you go like on like, I don't know, I guess like Google or something, and you just like log into Gradescope. So however you get to Gradescope, whether it's through Canvas or you just go on the website, you just get to Gradescope, and then you take a picture of your work to upload the file, and then it automatically syncs with your laptop. So whatever you uploaded on your phone, it's also uploaded on the laptop too.
So you have to have the quiz open on your phone as well.
Yeah, so just have the quiz open on your phone, like just log in through your phone and then upload the picture, and then it'll be the same thing on the laptop.
Will it show it in real time, like after you, like it'll just show that it's like exactly what you have on your phone, it'll show up on your laptop?
Yeah, so the exact file you uploaded on your phone, it'll be on your laptop.
Okay, and like, so you go through Gradescope, and on your phone, it gives you an option to take a picture. And
Yeah, so like, you know how you click like upload file, like on Gradescope, and it'll be like, I'm not used to doing it on a laptop. I always do it through my phone. So when you do it through your phone, like you can upload file and it'll say like take photo or like go to files and stuff like that if you have an iPhone. And you just take
Okay.
a picture and you just upload it.
Thank you so much. That's
You're welcome.
cool.
Wait, I have a quick question. I thought that we couldn't upload a picture of our work. Like it had to be a file or something instead of a
Pictures
photo.
are okay for quizzes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. As always, yes, like we said, if you do have a really good suggestion or if you have a good question, feel free to reach out to one of us and we can get you guys set up with that. Other TAs, do you guys have any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to say. I don't know. Don't get discouraged. Just keep working. I promise it'll get better. I promise. Anything you want to say, Matthew?
Let's see. Maybe not in this class, but yeah, along the lines of don't get discouraged. I started my freshman year with a sub 3 GPA, and now I have an interview invite to a med school. So don't give up. Really, like there really is no time, like no like single moment where like you should just give up. Like especially on these quizzes, they're worth in comparison to everything else like so little to like to the rest of the class and to like your overall career. Like it's not worth stressing about little things. Like really, like don't like take it from me. Don't worry about it. Like I started off literally thinking something like, wow, I just committed to 4 years of biochem and I'm not gonna have a future. I started from that to like, I'm pretty happy where I am now. So like, just don't worry about little things. It sounds like really tough right now. It seems really tough, but y'all can get through it as long as you're able to manage it and just don't break down. That's like the number one thing. So.
For sure. So with that being said, that's basically what we have. Don't forget, you guys have some LEs due tonight. The regrade opens up in an hour, so don't miss that window either. And then, yeah, we're about to close things out. So feel free to ask any questions now. Otherwise, good luck with everything. We'll see you in class in the next few days.
Was there an average for this quiz that was released?
Yes. So the average for this last quiz, was about a 71.85%.
Gotcha. And is that on Gradescope, or do you have to request that?
We can see it from our point of view. I don't think I don't think y'all can see that. I don't think that's an option we can do either. It just happens to give us like a bunch of stats that we can look at. I mean, if y'all are really curious, I guess I'll ask the professor about posting that, but.
Normally Dr. B would give like the average of the test. I don't think she would mind sharing that.
Yeah, actually, well, it's a little tough because there's so many different assignments because we've made one for each start time. But I'm pretty sure like the overall aggregate was like 71.85 or something like that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matthew, for the inspirational story. I'm glad that you guys are feeling better about that. I think with that being said, we're going to wrap things up. TA's last minute thing, or should I wrap it up?
You good?
All right. Good to go. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Don't forget the stuff that's due tonight, and we'll see you in class. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.